Hi, everyone. I'm Selena Kyle, and I'm a senior litigator and managing attorney at the Natural Resources Defense Council, which most people call NRDC for short. We're a not-for-profit, membership-supported organization that advocates to protect environment and public health. I've been with NRDC for about 15 years now, and that whole time my practice has included developing and filing citizen suits under some of the major federal environmental and public health laws that I'm going to be talking about today. So I'll start with a roadmap of what I'm going to cover. I'll start by discussing what citizen suits are and what purposes Congress had for writing citizen suit provisions into some of our major federal environmental laws. After that, I'll survey some of the major laws that include citizen suit provisions and mention an alternative way that you may be able to enforce federal environmental laws that don't include those provisions. Next, I'll talk about the main issues or types of claims you can present through citizen suit provisions and the key remedies that are available under those provisions and through some related government policy and practice around citizen suits. Next, I'll talk about the mechanics of developing and filing a citizen suit and some of the key things to be ready for as a lawyer pursuing one of these cases. I'll talk there about standing requirements under Article 3 of the Federal Constitution. I'll also talk about the requirements to provide notice to the prospective defendant and certain government agencies. I'll talk about the potential for preclusive action by government agencies and intervention by those agencies. I'll touch on venue options. I'll talk about the process of litigating from a complaint to final remedy. And then I'll talk about the possibility of recovering attorney's fees and costs from the other side if you're in the position of representing a plaintiff in such a suit and have enough success that you're in a position to present a fee claim. And along the way, I'll include observations on trends and practice tips from my own experience. So, citizen suits. What are they? What are they for? What laws provide for them? So citizen suit is a label that Congress gave to the provisions I'm going to be talking about today. And in this context, citizen just means a person whose interest is or may be harmed by some violation of one of the laws that they're looking to enforce. So for example, in the Clean Water Act, the main citizen suit language is at 33 U.S. Code 1365. And in subsection G, you'll see that it says for purposes of that section, the citizen term just means a person or persons having an interest which is or may be adversely affected. So what's the point of citizen suits? What are they for? Well, they allow private people like you and me and organizations like NRDC to enforce laws that benefit them or their memberships in the case of organizations directly, without having to wait for the government to step in and do its own enforcement work. Congress provided for citizen enforcement because it recognized that not all violations would be caught and enforced by the government. In the case of environmental public health laws like we're talking about today, the classic government enforcer is EPA, and it could be either federal EPA or a state equivalent agency. Of course, those agencies can be overburdened. They may have other priorities. They may face political or financial pressure not to take on certain cases. And Congress recognized that and wanted to provide a backstop and a complementary mechanism where, for whatever reason, the government enforcers are not acting to pursue violations. So they provided for private citizens to serve as effectively attorneys general alongside the government. There's some discussion of this, for example, in the legislative history to the Clean Air Act citizen suit provision from the early to mid-'70s. The legislative history talks about how this would further the goal of cleaning the air and further democratic empowerment, and that it was important because there's perils to relying exclusively on government entities that may not have the capacity or the will to monitor and enforce all violations. And that complementary role for private citizens is reflected in some of the special provisions I'll talk about today. For example, provisions around being able to recover your fees and costs from the other side in certain circumstances if you're representing a plaintiff. provisions around having to notify government regulators as well as your prospective defendant before you sue, and provisions for the government to seek to intervene in your case. And there's some discussion of those provisions and how they further the purposes of citizen suits in the Bennett v. Peer decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. That's at 520 U.S. 154-165.